Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. If you guys remember, a couple weeks ago, I think it was, I made a tier list. And in that tier list, I had it as you can see on the screen Ra being the strongest god in the game, with Isis, Set, all of these to follow. Now, remember, when I made this tier list, there was a lot of caveats in the video, but primarily that this was made based on a tournament scenario. I believe that tournaments have the highest level of play. So if I make a tier list, it's based on the highest level of play. Well, as you guys know, that the Wrath of the Gods just finished up, so we actually have the win rates from the tournament itself. So I thought it would be fun to kind of look at what I did and my thoughts based on the actual statistical evidence. So here is the win rates at for Wrath of the Gods, and just want to give a shout out to AOM Stats. This is where I got it. He put a lot of hard work into this. He's been doing it for all the tournaments, so I do appreciate the work that he's put into our game and our community. So check him out as well. But here are the win rates. You can see all the gods right here. So let's just do a little summary first. I have Ra as the strongest god in the game. And as you can see, win rate kind of supports that. Ra is the strongest god in the game. But there are a lot of interesting things here too. Firstly, let's look at Freyr. Like I put Freyr at the bottom. I think once again, stats kind of show that as well. But this is the interesting one. Set actually had a pretty low win rate. Set is at 44%, whereas here you can see as it's in the A tier, right? I put it in the A tier, but here it would all clearly be B or C at this point. Now, a couple things I want to mention, because I know that a lot of people are probably thinking this as well, is you can't look at statistics alone, because statistics don't tell the whole story. And you guys know that I do this in my regular day-to-day job. I work as an accountant, so I know that numbers don't always tell the full story. So for example, if somebody really strong like the Mista was playing Zeus, then obviously Zeus is going to skyrocket to the top, right? Whereas if somebody like, somebody who doesn't play that much Zeus was actually playing it, it's going to bring the win rates down. Unfortunately, there's going to be no empirical statistical way of getting 100% valid evidence in this scenario, right? You're always going to have discrepancies. You're going to always have issues, right? When looking at numbers, it's never going to tell the full story. So maybe I phrased that a little bit strangely, but realistically, what I'm trying to say is that numbers alone will never tell the full story. I think the closest you can get to a full story is um, community, like, or expert opinions. If all the experts are unanimously saying that Ra is the strongest god, and then the experts are also behaving in the sense that they first pick Ra, they ban Ra, then you kind of know, okay, at the back of your mind, Ra is very, very strong, right? So I think that's one way of supporting the evidence is when everyone is doing a certain thing, behavioral. The second set is looking at the data, which we're doing right here. So Ra is clearly the best god because everyone is first picking Ra, all the experts agree, and the statistics agree. So, like, hands down, we all know that Ra is probably the best. But Zeus, on the other hand, Zeus, I think, did really well in this tournament for a variety of factors. Firstly, I think Zeus is one of the strongest gods on hybrid maps. On a map like Kerlogger, which I don't think is in the ranked map pool, so you guys might not see it that often, but it's similar to Anatolia or even Midgard per se. Zeus does really well on those maps because he has access to Scylla, and he also has access to additional favor. So right off the bat, he can win water. He can do very well on water. And then on top of that, Zeus is really good there because he has the access to bolt. So let's say you're trying to push into your opponent's dock. Then first of all, if your opponent has some defense there, like an early myth unit, you bolt it, you automatically have an edge. On top of that, Zeus hoplites are essentially siege. So you can siege down a dock really quickly. And on top of that, you have restoration, which is one of the best H2 god powers. All of these factors give Zeus an edge on hybrid water maps, right? I also think Zeus is very underrated. I think Zeus is really good on land maps as well. You guys can see in the finals, Recon versus the Mista, where Zeus versus Kronos, Zeus actually had a field day on that map on Ghost Lake as well. So a lot of it comes down to, Zeus is like Mista's playing Zeus, so Mista's a very strong player, so he does very well with Zeus. But I also do believe that Zeus is a very underrated god and a very, very strong god. So I think as time progresses and people get better at this game, Zeus is going to rise even further up the top because Zeus has so many different tools that has to his disposal, right? So Zeus, I put up here in the A tier. I honestly think Zeus is still well situated on my tier list. I do think I was still right on the mark here. I don't think Zeus would ever be S tier because I don't think Zeus on a just a standard land map is going to do as well as Ra. Zeus needs situational picks, right? He's going to do well in into some matchups, and some matchups he's not going to do that well, right? So Zeus first, let's say, Set or maybe Isis or Ra, he might have a little bit of trouble on land maps. I don't think he's going to be bad, but he's going to have some difficulty on those type of maps. But so far, I think this still kind of plays into my tier list. Now, moving on, because we don't want to spend too much time on one god, Loki. Now, Loki, I honestly think I was wrong about Loki. I think I put Loki in the B slash low A tier, and I put Loki lower because I think that the three Egyptian gods do really well versus Loki. However, I think Loki is so strong versus every other god that he doesn't deserve to be in the B tier. I think he deserves to be in the high A tier. I think Loki can even be in the S tier if it wasn't for these three gods that are kind of holding him down, which is what I said in the tier list video too. So, do I think Loki is B tier? I think if I were to go back in time after playing this tournament, having the knowledge of this tournament rather, I think I would put Loki a little bit higher up. I would have put him probably mid A tier. And he's only mid A tier because the Egyptians hold him down. Moving on, Gaia. So now I put Gaia still pretty high on the top of the tier list, right? And I think Gaia is really good versus almost every single god on this tier list, except she struggles a little bit versus Loki. And to a smaller extent, she might struggle a little bit with versus Thor as well. But I think Loki is her main issue, right? Loki can get to flaming weapons really quickly with a lot of Herser and a lot of myth units, and that kind of can kill a Gaia player at the second gold mine. So just to recap, do I think Gaia is well situated in my tier list? I think I'm still right about this. I still think Gaia is where it should be. I think I was wrong about Loki. Loki should probably be right around here. Um, I think Gaia is exceptionally strong. Just has a little bit of couple matchups that are really tough for her. Um, so Gaia, yeah, still at the top. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised about this. I'm not surprised about this, and I'm not surprised about this. I am a little bit surprised about Loki, but I think I always thought Loki was strong. I just never knew that he would ever end up with a 60% win rate. So yeah, now we're moving on to Isis. Still very high. Anything above 50% is pretty good, but Isis is at 55%. So I think honestly, Isis still is in the second pick on my A tier list, and I think that's where she belongs. I think the reason she belongs there is because she's so good on so many maps, right? You can pick Isis on hybrid water maps too. I don't know how many remember, but I picked Isis on versus Vortex on Karalogger, and I beat his Zeus there. I think Isis can be picked on any map and is good versus almost any of these civs. There's not a single bad matchup that I can think about with Isis versus any of these civs. Isis is so strong, so well rounded. I think she still deserves a second place in this tier list, and I'm not surprised. And the statistics kind of show it as well, right? She's still pretty high up there. I think if like 55 to 58, I don't think is a major difference. I think all of these right here are S tier or high A to S tier, and I think that's what I have them ranked as well. Now, Odin. I have Odin pretty low on the tier list, and I think I was a little bit wrong about this too. Now, before this tournament, I thought Odin was just a bad pick overall. I thought that all the other gods do really well versus him, but I realized something, and this is something that my friend Rappo told me too. And he said that Odin does very well versus other Norse civs, which I wasn't sure about. So he said that Loki should never beat Odin. Odin should always beat Loki. So I said, "Are you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah, 100%." So I'm like, "Okay, so maybe he had a point there, right?" So we played a couple times and he kind of showed me why, which is Odin can just outspam all the other Norse gods because he has great hunt and he has an access to food bonus, food gathering bonus. So that's one of the reasons why Odin is so strong. So now, knowing the knowledge from Wrath of the Gods and thinking about this a little bit more, I think Odin is a Norse killer, right? Odin does very well versus Loki, does very well versus Thor. I don't know really too much about Freyr, but I think he does well there too. And I'll tell you the reason why. It's because, and rather than tell you the reason why, I'll tell you, Mista picked Odin into my Thor. And going into the matchup, I thought, okay, Thor has an advantage, right? I get more villagers out. I have Dwarven Mine. I thought I would be in a good position there. But little did I know, Mista actually had a better understanding of that matchup. Mista picked Odin into Thor, and Odin actually kind of somewhat, not, I won't say counters Thor, but does very well versus Thor. And the reason why is all the things that I mentioned in terms of the food gathering and extra food. But when you ask yourself, okay, you get extra food, what does that give you? But that gives you Valkyries. And Valkyries are the strongest, probably one of the strongest unit in Norse wars. It soaks up all of the damage from the incoming force, and it does so much damage itself. If you're able to spam Valkyries and your opponent is not able to spam them, then you're going to be able to win almost every fight, right? Because the cool thing about the Valkyries is they kind of synergize really well with the Throwing Axemen. Throwing Axemen do really good versus Herser. You kill off the enemy Herser, which in Norse Wars is their only hero in H2, and then you're going to automatically start winning all these fights. So that's why Odin has a really good advantage in Norse Wars. And now, would I put Odin higher up? I think I definitely would. I think I would put Odin higher than Poseidon and Hades, and I'd put it maybe at the higher end of the B tier. Um, Moving on, let's look at Thor. Now, I had Thor pretty high up, and I do think Thor is a very strong civilization, but I realized Thor has some weaknesses, some glaring weaknesses. Thor does really well versus the Greek civilizations because he's able to kind of have a little bit of extra playing room. He's going to have a little bit of time for his villagers to kick in, right? So, as you guys all know, Thor has Dwarven Armory. He gets a lot of extra villagers in H2, H1, and as a result, he has a much stronger economy than other civilizations. What that means is that he's gonna, if he's allowed a little bit of time, a little bit of breathing room, he's gonna completely dismantle a lot of these gods because he's just gonna have such a strong economy. And I think Thor does very, very well into Greek, and Thor does very, very well into Atlanteans. I think I'm not too sure about like maybe not into Gaia, but overall versus Kronos and Oranos, I think Thor does pretty good because you have a little bit of breathing room before the game gets started. But versus Odin, you don't have that much breathing room because the Valkyrie is going to be in your base right at the start of the game. And the second thing is Thor's biggest weakness in his early game is he kind of gathers wood a little bit late. So if the Odin Raven comes into your base and does forest fire and takes you off trees, then you're going to be even further behind, right? Because he's going to have to go to another forest, and then kind of production gets a little bit stalled because you're not able to put down all your longhouses and raxes immediately, and it kind of just slows down Thor considerably. So, anyways, don't want to take too long into this. I do think Thor kind of deserves this spot right here in the A tier, but I think Odin or even like Loki, these civilizations can give Thor a lot of trouble, which I wasn't really sure about before I made this tier list. So I still think this is still kind of similar to what I thought. Now, here is my biggest surprise. Set is actually really lowly ranked. I thought Set was like the third best god in the game, but Set is at like 44%. So once again, you got to take the stats with a grain of salt, right? Do I think I would still pick Set second or third pick? I think I would. I think Set is good. I don't think Set is good on hybrid maps. So unlike Zeus, which is very versatile, or Isis, which is very versatile, I think Set is kind of a little bit weaker on the water maps. And the reason why I think is because Isis gets prosperity, which allows for a little bit of extra income to kind of jumpstart your military, right? So she has a stronger economy. And water maps, it's really crucial to be able to have a nice little start where you can kind of make some cabinets or some ships to kind of raid the opponent's water, and at the same time have enough defenses at home with priests and raxes to kind of, either do a little bit of pushing yourself or make sure that you're defensively structured to withstand whatever your opponent is going to be making. So Isis is really good in that regard. I don't think Set has, whoops, I don't think Set has as much versatility on water maps. So I think he's mostly played on land. And now one of the things I notice about Set is a lot of civilizations can kind of abuse his early what's the word? Conversions of animals. So let me give you an example. I was playing Set versus Mista's Hades on Marsh, right? And Mista, so let's not even talk about names. You can take your Catascopos, you can attack an animal, and then Set won't be able to attack that, convert that animal. And sometimes actually the animal turns on your priest as well. So I wasn't able to convert any animals in one of my games as a result of the Catascopos just harassing my priest. And that's one issue, right? And then you can also have it in maybe like versus Zeus, the priest can get bolted. So Greek kind of do okay versus Set, which initially people thought Set would do really well versus Greek. And I do think Set does well versus Greek, but I think Greeks, if they can kind of disrupt the early game conversions, Set can be in a world of trouble. Because I don't think, aside from Valley of the Kings and Thoth is a very strong power boost. I think Set could have a little bit of difficulty in a lot of matchups. It's just the Mythic Age that Set is very strong, in Age 2, where you can kind of bully your opponents with Wadjets and a lot of your Rax units. Okay, so do I think I would move Set? I think I would move him a little bit. I have him third place here, but I think I might have put him like maybe after Zeus. I don't think he's third. He might not be third pick a lot of times in draft situations. Okay. And I'm just going to run through these ones. I think Hades, once again, is very similar to Zeus in the sense that he's good on hybrid maps like Karlager, Midgard, Anatolia. I think he does very well there. And he just doesn't do as well as Zeus because his hoplites don't have the ability to siege down buildings. He doesn't have the bolt, which is really crucial. But what he has is he has shades, which are going to help there. And he has a little bit of a better economy because you're able to get Vault of Erebus early on these hybrid water maps. He has a really low win rate here, though, 44%. I think Hades is not a weak god, but I think Hades is a very difficult god. You kind of need good matchups. You need good maps. I think it's not a very easy Civ to play. And you can see it's actually, if you look at the win rates, it's actually, oh, sorry, this is the pick and ban rates. So, yeah, I'm surprised actually somebody would pick or ban Hades first. But regardless, I think Hades is kind of like a weaker version of Zeus, but I still think he's okay. Now, here's where I got something else wrong. I put Kronos really high up here on the A tier. And I thought Kronos was really strong because you're able to boom really fast and just kind of, kind of push, either do a little bit of early pressure into a boom or just do early pressure into try to kill your opponent. But there's so many counters to this that I wasn't aware of. Like Norse can actually counter this. Like Thor is very good versus this, which was shown in the tournament. And even like Loki, I think does very well versus this Kronos shenanigans that you can do in the early game. Now, Kronos might do very well versus some civilizations like Greek. I think Kronos is okay versus Greek. Kronos is, I would say, is a little bit shaky versus Norse. But I'm not too sure about versus Egyptian. I think Kronos versus Egyptian could be a very close matchup, 60-40, 50-50. I'm not too sure. But I think I would put Kronos down in the B tier. I just felt like it wasn't a very solid pick in some maps, and maybe I wouldn't pick him again. Now here, Oranos is still very lowly rated. And this is the part, like I have him pretty lowly rated on my tier list too, but I don't think Oranos is that weak. After playing a couple games against Oranos, I started to realize that this civilization actually has a ton of potential. People are still learning a little bit how to play Oranos. People are not too accustomed to how to put sky passages correctly and how to really use him to his maximum benefit. But I think Oranos has a ton of potential. He might be really low on the tier list today, but I think if we check back at this tier list in a month or two, or even a few weeks from now, I think Oranos can easily be in the A tier. I think he's a very, very, very strong civilization. So definitely put Oranos maybe a little bit higher up here. Now Freyr, I have it last. There's not much to say here. I don't think Freyr is bad, but I just think Freyr is similar to Hades, where it's very difficult to play this civilization. People haven't kind of fully worked it out. I don't think Freyr has any major well, he does have major weaknesses in the sense that you kind of have a difficult time booming and being aggro early on. And I just don't see that much potential with Freyr at the moment. Like in the future, maybe so, especially when you get to the Mythic Age and you have all these different technologies that are being pushed on. Like you just get researching them ASAP. Like that's really cool and all, but players have gotten really good to the point where they kill you before you get to that stage. So I think Freyr, Hades, I think these civs have a lot of potential, but they're very difficult to play. So I still think put Freyr C tier. This one, Poseidon, I wasn't surprised either. Like I put it pretty low on the list. I think Poseidon is just a little bit weak at the moment. And the reason why I think Poseidon is weak is because if you look at the Hippias, which is Poseidon's main unit, right? The Hippias falls off really hard in the heroic age. I think almost every army comp kind of massacres the Hippias. It's not as good as a Contarius. It's not as good as a raiding cavalry. I think it's just a bad unit to use on head-on collisions, especially now in Retold where so many units have so much bonus damage versus cavalry. Like spearmen have bonus damage, hoplites have bonus damage, and they had bonus damage in the original game too, but the bonus damage has been significantly increased. So that's why Poseidon's having a lot of trouble, because you can't make Hippias in H3. You can make it in some niche, like some certain spots or whatnot, but overall, it's a very difficult civilization to play, because you kind of have to make like a hoplite Toxote army, or you have to rely on Artemis, right? I think Hippias need a buff, and I think they're going to get a buff. I hope so. I think either a little bit of extra HP or a little bit of hack armor is needed for this unit, because there's the multipliers versus cavalry are so heavy in this game. So, like, if you look at the raiding cavalry is not that great in head-on collisions either, but the raiding cavalry is generally more versatile. It's a little bit faster than the Hippias early on, and then you have it as a 2-pop unit, whereas the Hippias is a 3-pop unit. So I think overall, I think Poseidon's really, I think it's a really, I don't know, it's not that good, I would say. Um, but yeah, so this is also an interesting thing to look at, right? When you look at civs, right? Which civs are doing well versus other civs? And if you look at Loki, Loki actually did pretty well versus Raw. So, I mean, I thought Loki did bad versus Egyptian. Remember, the sample size is only 4. So it's not a huge thing right there. But Loki, as I was talking about, Loki did terrible versus Odin, which is what I was talking about in the video as well. And Loki did, actually surprisingly, did very well versus Set too. That's actually a really big surprise. So the civs that I thought Loki would struggle versus, like Egyptian, actually Loki did pretty well. Loki's main pitfall is Odin, Hades, and Kronos, surprisingly. So very interesting to see that. Now, what I want to look at Set as well, because I thought Set was a stronger civilization, which I thought I got pretty bang on. But you can see that Set kind of struggles versus. Am I looking at this right? Oh, this is Set, and my opponent has Loki. So I was right. So Set has a lower win rate. Sorry, Loki has a lower win rate versus Set, because Set has 66%, and Ra 75% versus Loki. So I was right about that. Gaia actually has a pretty high win rate versus Loki too. So I mean, this is kind of my point. You can't look at numbers alone. It's also about feel, right? Because if I'm playing somebody that's rated 200 points lower than me, and I play, let's say, the worst gods, one of the worst gods like Poseidon, and I win, then it's going to boost up Poseidon's win rate. So another thing to think about, and I'm going to close off with this as well, is that you can't look at numbers alone in a vacuum, right? You got to look at opinions too, how people feel about playing versus certain matchups. So if there's like 10 experts, and 10 experts all say that, if I was going to pick a civ first, I'll pick Ra, then you automatically know. I said this at the beginning of the video too, right? But these things, I think players' opinions and players' feels have a lot more to do with it than just raw win rates alone, right? And I think this is, if you look at win rates with a massive sample size, like overall, like let's just do it quickly as well, right? If we're just looking at overall win rates, 18,000 games, 11,000 games, right? You can see that this is more reasonable to look at than a tournament win rate statistics, because tournament, you have like 5 or 10 games per god, or maybe a little bit more, but generally a lot less than this. This has a ton more games, right? So, and this is actually kind of interesting to see. But so, do I think I can make a tier list based on this? No, because if somebody is at like 1200 elo, right, and then they're not playing the civilization to their maximum capabilities, then it's hard to really justify if the civilization is strong or weak. I think Loki is just, these civilizations are a little bit easier to play, like Loki, Gaia. Thor, I don't think is super easy, but easier than most. And Freyr at the top is kind of surprising too, right? So, yeah, I kind of went off topic there. But, anyways, let me know what you guys think. Tell me if you guys disagree. Tell me what you guys were surprised about in this tournament. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching. Take care. Bye.